I'm Lee Spencer with Tony Eury Jr., crew chief for the number 50 car. You've been going to racetracks since you were 14 years old. Has the last 48 hours been the craziest of your life?
Yeah, it's been pretty crazy. I mean, we come down here with no alliances or anything like that, so it's like coming down here is kind of off our notes that we had last year with Kaz, and with all these teams with alliances, we really didn't know that we had a shot at getting in. But it's like I told Conor, I was like, if you really want to run the 500 next year, then you really need to go down here. It's kind of like a mulligan. I mean, we can go down here, we can practice, we can try to make the race. And I said, at least you'll have some experience instead of coming in here blind next year. So that's kind of our thought process going in it. And we're like, man, just go out there and make laps and just get a feel for the car, get a feel for drafting. I kind of screwed up on the setup and had it too low when we started a race. That's why it was bouncing and stuff. But on that first pit stop, we were able to get it back. And then it was just a matter of him getting used to the car. You drafted a little bit with BJ and stuff, so he told me after the race it's 100% better, and I just told him, I said, well, we got 2 hours to work on it, so when you come down with no practice, it's like simulation and all that stuff, it's big.
That's what I was going to ask you. No practice, a guy who's never been in the draft before, never been to Daytona before, doesn't get to qualify. I mean, what was going through your mind on Wednesday night, even before the Twins, because you had quite the dilemma.
Yeah, I mean, it was like what played out was ultimately what we needed to happen, and it's like, because I told him, I said, I don't know that we'll lock in. The two that locked in was what I expected. The GMS cars and 2311, they have great speedway programs, so I figured that those two would going to lock in, and it was going to be a matter of who we were going to race, Chandler or Zane, or the 62 with Austin. And Austin, I feel like, was probably the bigger shot. I feel like that's probably one of his strong suits is running speedway races, but ultimately, he just kind of got caught up in the wreck, and the same thing. The same game's going to be played on Sunday. If you can either race up front or you can play this. The conservative card, which is probably what we're going to play. We're going to get him experience and get him back there. But, you're looking at the just atrocity, of everything falling out, and hopefully we're there at the end.
What have you learned about Conor? I mean, it's all fine and dandy to say that you want to put the Daytona 500 on your resume. Travis Pastrana basically said the same thing. You've raced in the Indy 500. You've done all these cool things. I think Conor said he still wants to run Le Mans, just finding a ride. But, to have the responsibility of putting a guy with the kind of ties that he has to the speedway in your car, that's a lot of responsibility.
Yeah, I mean, Conor, he's great. I met him first time last year at the Roval. And it was just like, hey, that whole race was a test session to get ready for this year because we got a couple road courses we're going to run. But, at the end of the day, the guy is just, he's fearful. I mean, he ain't scared of nothing, which is kind of cool and it's kind of crazy at the same time. But it's like I told him yesterday, I'm like, let's just play our role, see where the cards lay out, and then hopefully we make it, and we did. So, I mean, we did everything we could. It wasn't a great showing, but we got 2 hours to make it a great one.
They were talking about the hose story on Sirius about, someone even suggested driving up the road to 95 and meeting somebody coming from your shop halfway. I mean, how did you finally get the parts and pieces you needed to get into the duel last night?
Well, we ended up modifying the hose that was on it. And then, I walked to every truck in the garage just seeing if somebody had a number 20 Wiggins hose, and we finally found one that we could piece together. And just done it old school radiator style, put hose clamps on it and said, all right, here we go, because it's on the suction side. So, but it was, it's with these cars, I mean, everything is so custom on them. And it's like, with the new team here starting up, they don't have the means of having every spare part. We've only got one car, and we typically go back and forth with it from Daytona to the road course and adjust the body for that. But it's like we're trying to get a second chassis together, and and it's like I told Willie, it's like we'll try to do everything we can to get this thing up and rolling, but it's there's 3 employees here, me counting one of them on the weekend. So DeAndre and Chris, they probably do more of the work than anybody, just trying to make it happen. So it's a small team, and it's cool to see the small teams win.
You've won this deal with big teams. You've been here and had the ultimate celebration with Dale Jr. What advice have you given Conor going into Sunday?
It's going to be who's there at the end. I think we got to look at it as a different scenarios. Like when I was here with Junior. Junior is like we tried to lead every lap, run up front all day. With this deal, it's kind of more like the scenario I did with Danica. It's like we got one bullet, and we can either shoot it on Thursday or we can shoot it on Sunday. And we just got to play the game to where, and survive. We know that there's going to be a big wreck. I mean, you've seen it in the second duel. I expect that all day Sunday, and if you can play your cards right and have a car that's halfway decent at the end of the race and you got all the fenders on it, you got a good shot at it.
Brett Keselowski said the other day, and I found this really strange, he said that the dynamic has changed in this race and you really have to wreck somebody to win it. Do you think that it's gotten that vicious?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the problem is the cars are so even nowadays with the way that they scan the bodies, the way they scan it under trays, and everybody's pretty much got the same springs and everything in the car. So it just comes down to is the cars are so equal that unless you've got an energy that's happening with one lane versus the other, it's basically bumper tag. And when the bumper tag happens, you've seen it in the second duel there, to where they hit somebody so hard that he was out of shape and everybody had to lift off the throttle. That was why it changed up. But pretty much it's took the racing out of it, because when you make things so equal, there's never any differences. You think back in the early 90s when when everybody was like praising it. Well, you had Robert Yates had the best motor. You knew RCR had the best aero package. You knew Roush had the best suspension package. So everybody had their track that they were good at. You just had to sacrifice something at the other tracks. But that put the diversity back into the racing to where you didn't have the same guy winning all the time. Now it's basically it's IROC. It's like whoever's got the best engine program is going to be there. The drivers are still the drivers. Cream's going to rise to the top. We all know that. But at the end of the day, it's going to come down to who's got the most engineers and who's got the most power, and that's who's going to win.
Final question. 25 years ago, Big E finally won this race. He was your boss man at the time. What do you remember from that day, and what do you remember about the bounce in his step that he came back to Morrisville with?
I mean, it was great. That was probably – he had lost it so many times, like he'd get discouraged coming down here, but he knew he was going to have a fast car. So, and to finally see him win it, and I think the tribute you see on pit road when he comes down with everybody that was in the garage goes out there and kind of salutes him and tells him good job. I mean, that was kind of, everybody knew he deserved it, and they were glad to see him finally get it, and it put a new step in him. But whenever you see that kind of stuff, I mean, that's just it's kind of like a Michael Jordan type deal. People respect, they know what you were respected for, and that's kind of the way I look at him. He'll always be my hero, and I miss him every day. But when you come down here, you always expected him to be up front.
Appreciate your time, Stiffy. Nothing better than to see you down here at Daytona.
Thank you so much.